Good afternoon, investigators, and welcome to episode 153 of SpyCurious. I cannot believe Mike has been doing this for 153 episodes. Well done, Mike. It's
Thank you very much.
Quite an achievement, even though I've been telling you to do it for years. So,
and I'm 3 years older to boot.
So we have a jam-packed show today, as usual, and I will let Mike walk us through it.
Okay, people, let's have a look at our introduction screen to see what we're doing this week. Missing from my introduction screen is today I am going to show you the Australia's biggest ever undercover blunder in civil investigations. So I'm going to show you that today, and you will be able to get the press articles from the time in relation to that undercover blunder. So you'll be able to email me and I'll send that to you so you don't make the same mistakes they do. G'day, Renee. Hi, Jamie. How you going, people? Good to see you. Yes, 153. All good fun. We're going to look at workers' compensation fraud in Queensland, some recent convictions, and I'm going to show you 9 ways that they uncover workers' compensation fraud in Victoria, in New South Wales, in Queensland, in South Australia, in Abu Dhabi, in Great Britain, in Canada, and everywhere else. So you'll see that today. We've got Investigator Meme of the Week, which is a real beauty, and we're going to be talking about our AirLap meeting for next Friday, our Industry Excellence Awards. Now, last time we had those, Casey went all the way down to Melbourne and handed out those awards. Do you remember doing that, Casey?
Of course, that was brilliant.
It was. And that was at the AISP meeting down in Melbourne. And yeah, very happy people as a result of that. I still get feedback from that today. So we'll be talking about that. First up this week, though, something that's really important was for government investigators out there with a certificate for a government investigation and diploma of government investigation. Operation Mafra happened during the last week. Now, what that was all about was the Australian Federal Police and the Australian Taxation Office executed warrants against people who'd made up businesses that weren't real and then claimed GST refunds. So over the last week or so, they've gone out and executed some, I think, 11 search warrants in relation to that. And they've searched the people's properties and they've seized their computers and they've taken away documents and all that sort of thing. And those people are going to be charged with some kind of like fraud or whatever. So here's a brief video that they put up in relation to this. You can find this video on your computer, just Operation Mafra. And that looks like every block of units on the Gold Coast, and it wouldn't surprise me if it was the Gold Coast. G'day, Andrew. Great to hear from you, mate. I hope you're all down there in Sydney. So that was Operation Mafra. The search warrants were all executed. So all that training you did with Pat Flynn, that's what the people in those 11 different locations throughout Australia did during the last week or so. And all of them would have held a certificate for in government investigations or a diploma of government investigations in relation to what they were doing there. So that's happened this week in our news. Just got to come back up to the other newsworthy stuff. Yeah, so as I promised, these are the 2 people behind Australia's greatest ever undercover surveillance operation blunder, and it happened down in northern New South Wales when they infiltrated a bunch of local people who lived there and who were concerned about gas in their water. When they turned on the tap, they could light the actual gas and they couldn't drink the water, and neither could their livestock. So they were protesting about the gas operations on their property, which the gas companies could just go in and start fracking away. And these 2 people who are pictured here, who you can see, they infiltrated the protesters. Now, the one with the circle around him, as you can see, he's got the yellow circle around him, and he's the person on the left. He didn't like having his photo taken. And the protesters thought, that's a bit funny. We've got TV cameras here filming everything we do, and he doesn't like having his photograph taken. So that was a bit weird. And the lady on the right, she had some kind of pretext to join the group as well. And she was talking to them on the email, and she sent them an email from her investigation agency. Oh, blunder of the year. Yeah. You just can't do that. So they had over-the-top pretexts. He was some guy who rode a Harley and wanted to go in and help, in the protests. She sent the email from an investigation agency. He acted like a prick with a stick up his backside. Never, ever do that when you're undercover. You be humble. You be low profile. You just be really, really invisible in the protesters, right? And he did not like having his picture taken. And when she was confronted over the email and being an undercover operative reporting back to the gas company, she fell apart in tears. Confronted at the site, she fell apart in tears. Now, if you're going to be interrogated by people who want to confront you in the real world, they stick you in a jail cell for a week that's really cold. They don't give you any clothing. Or you go to the toilet, you're going to go to the toilet on the floor. It's very uncomfortable. You're unfed. You're disorientated. You're confused. Right. That's what happens if you piss people off in Iran and North Korea, that sort of thing. This lady wasn't in that situation. She fell apart just being asked. So if you would like to see the original press articles from the time, this goes back quite a few years now, that names the two people, names the companies they work for, the suspected government department they work for, and just how atrocious and how not to do an undercover operation is, like this live stream, flick me an email or private message me and I'll send you all the articles in the press about this completely blundered undercover surveillance operation, so you will know what not to do if ever you're asked to do it. Nothing more fun than working undercover, so keep that in mind. So PM me, email me, whatever you want to do, right? But you must like this program, and I will send you the original press articles. Now, when you went to high school and you wrote your essays and stuff, your teachers always told you, don't look at that. Don't look at this emotion. Try and get an independent original press article from the time. The beauty of the internet is once you put one of those up, it's up there forever. And speaking of that, last week we had our press article that we put up. Just got to find it. With Francis Kerrigan. And the people that wrote to me and asked me for a copy of that article, Francis was talking about why they don't do marital and relationship surveillance in investigation agencies. And the people that wrote to me and requested that document know the very reason. And the very reason is a lot of common sense. It is you don't get any repeat business from it. That's why would you do it? Being in business is all about staying in business, all right? If someone comes to you for the 17th time for a marital and relationship surveillance, they don't need a surveillance operative. They need relationship counselling, right? They need to take a look at their narcissist behaviour, right? And look back and say, well, how could I work on myself for that? What could I do to change in relation to that? It's not a private investigator doing surveillance on your partner is going to solve your narcissist issues. So that's just something to keep in mind. Speaking of that, the Office of Fair Trading have listened to the people who were in the Consultative Committee on Violence Towards Women and the use of coercive control through the use of surveillance investigators in marital and relationship matters. So that's been going on, and the Office of Fair Trading said they're going to consult with the industry. Now, that was 3 weeks ago, and they haven't consulted with me, and they haven't consulted with you, and it's more likely they will consult with ASIL, which is a the biggest security industry association in Australia, who has nothing to do with investigators. So keep watching that, because I'll be making sure that the Office of Fair Trading consult with AIRLAP, AISP and AIPI in relation to that as well. So it's just something that has to be done. They can't blanket extra stuff onto all investigators. 95% have never done a marital and relationship surveillance. And last week I showed you a video of 10 investigation agencies that don't do it. And it took me 30 seconds to find those 10 investigation agencies. So in relation to that, the Office of Fair Trading, OFT, they can't demand that to get along, everybody's got to go along. What they've got to do is they've got to put their attention on the part of the industry that needs that attention, because a lot of them don't do that kind of thing. They don't even do surveillance, let alone marital and relationship surveillance. One of the interesting things in my research this week is on LinkedIn, and MJM have been advertising for quite a while for some investigators to do desktop investigations. Now, when you scroll down a little bit further, they had 131 applicants for this job, but you can see some of the information on the applicants. And it says there that 40% of them had a bachelor's degree and 22% had a master's degree.
Jeez.
Now, yeah, well, you've got to keep in mind, this is the thing, that LinkedIn is an American or a British program or system. And as soon as you have diploma on your profile, there's a little bit of a difference between a diploma in America and England than there is in Australia. I'm not saying Australia is any less, but there are quite a few people that do have degrees that become private investigators. Now, Dr. Michael King spoke at the AIPI live stream about 4 weeks ago and said this surprised him in his research. He found out that quite a few people had degrees that came into investigations. It's no surprise to me, because I see it every day with recognition of prior learning applications, and when I speak at conferences and I look at the other speakers and I meet the owners of investigation agencies. I know this. His research also confirmed this as well, but he was surprised about that in his research, not because he had made up his mind. Mike's been around. He is a top-level investigator. He's been a licensed private investigator, and he was doing his research. But I find it's quite common that which I discovered on LinkedIn this week really confirmed what I thought. So let's have a look at some of the jobs that are available this week. We are going to have Casey in a minute, and there is a cat or a dog in the background of me there somewhere.
Oh.
He's supposed to be outside with the bone. Oh dear. Steve down at LS Investigations down in Hobart is looking for factual investigators in Sydney. Now, Steve's had an investigation agency been established for over 23 years, and it operates nationally, and he's looking for factual investigators in Sydney to go out and interview people and take statements. So that's a really great opportunity there from Steve. Quantum Corp have advertised this week through the Australian Security Academy on all our websites and LinkedIn that they're after trainee investigators aged between 23 and 28 years of age for full-time investigation positions. Now, you might think that's a little bit odd, or that's a little bit strange, or that's a little bit weird. I have been fortunate enough to be interacting with Quantum Corp for over 20 years. And I have interviewed staff for their training and trained them, and recognition of prior learning and all sorts of things over that time. And people that I interviewed 20 years ago who were trainee investigators at the time are now industry leaders in their field. They're the go-to people at it, still working for Quantum Corp, managing aspects of Quantum Corp, and they really know what they're talking about. They really know what they're doing. So they capacity build starting at the beginning, and people hang around there. They stick around. So Quantum Corp, and if you were a year under that or a couple of years over, I wouldn't let that hold me back. I'd get in touch with them. So contact Kelly and just tell them you're licensed, you're looking for work, and see what they've got to offer. LinkedIn should never, ever be overlooked for job opportunities, people. This one is at the AFL, so you can jump on LinkedIn, look at the jobs, and you'll see this one. They are these are significant positions with a risk and compliance lead there. So that's an opportunity there on LinkedIn. One of the ones I noticed on LinkedIn this week was this one. So Kerrigan's, it's the first time I've actually seen them advertise on LinkedIn. They're looking for investigators all Australia-wide. Okay, so they're looking for them everywhere. Now, the beauty of LinkedIn, when they advertise there is a person who is the contact and they're named in relation to being the contact for the ad. And I've just got to find my contact for the ad, which I've got somewhere. I'm coming. This is live. This is we watch Mike Evans stuff it up. It's here on my list somewhere. Here it is. Now, the hiring team person was Judith Kerrigan. Now, I'm pretty familiar with Kerrigan's as an investigation agency, some quite a long familiarity with them, and I've never heard of Judith Kerrigan. And then I realised Judith Kerrigan is actually Judy Kerrigan. It sounds like on LinkedIn she's in trouble from her parents, but get in touch with Judy for that job. Last time I saw Judy was 20 years ago. We were at a service station and we were both filling up our cars with fuel and we both had big smiles on our face. And I said, "What are you smiling about, Jude?" She said, "I just dropped my kids off for all-day babysitting at Dreamworld." I said, "So have I." And we both smiled and paid for our fuel and went away. We both got caught out dumping our kids at Dreamworld for free babysitting, which is what you can do on the Gold Coast if you can get away with it. They can always sue you for repressed memory later on. So Judith is Judy. Great lady in Australian investigations. Get in touch with her and apply for that job. So that's on offer Australia-wide with Kerrigan's, and you can see it on LinkedIn. With that being all, a couple here. These two, this one at Sunnyfield is for a response team investigator, and this one at Care Choice, again, is for a disability support service for an investigator there as well. So you're going to be interviewing, seeing people about complaints about the care, relatives, or complaints come up by a person in care, or someone's heard one of the people in care sitting there at lunchtime and the gardeners walked past and that little boy said, "Oh, there goes my boyfriend," or something like that. So there is indicators that there could be an issue. So you're going to be investigating that in this kind of role. And there's quite a few of those jobs if you look on Seek this week in relation to that. I've got plenty more jobs. I'll come back to them in a minute. Casey, what's happening with you this week?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention first of all, like in regards to the undercover blunder, this is why you should always have a virtual machine. This is why I use virtual machines. There's just no chance. You don't want to take that risk. It is such a massive risk. And it happens all the time where people mix up emails or they might go to an account they might be looking on Facebook through their personal accounts instead of their sock puppet accounts. Have your virtual machines set up so it's a closed system where you're just using the email that you use to correspond with them. And that way you've got it there, it's safe. And I also use a clean computer. So what I'm talking on right now is my personal computer that I use just for my day-to-day stuff and play games and do that kind of stuff. And then here next to me, I have my work computer, which is full to the brim of different virtual machines that I've saved with all my different investigations so that there's no cross-contamination. I can't accidentally send an email from the wrong email, or I'm not going to muck up my Facebook accounts. Use virtual machines. It's really not as difficult as it sounds. Just have a look at how to do it. I highly recommend it because I would probably cry too. That would be my go-to.
So you spill your guts and you wouldn't even have to be tortured, Casey.
I wouldn't spill my guts. That would be my go-to, cry and then they'd feel bad and let me go. But I'm here today to talk about Spiderfoot. So I think I've spoken about this before. I'm not 100% sure, but it's a fantastic OSINT tool for when you're doing your desktop investigations. I had a case this week where I was just at my wit's end. I had spent hours looking for this person, and I'm the kind of person, I don't like not being able to find someone. And I use the free version of Spiderfoot. So you get 3 free scans a month. And I only kind of use it as a last resort. So I've got those scans there. And I finally plugged in an email address for the person that I was looking for, and it brought up something that was really old. It was an old Pinterest account that this person had set up. And luckily, there were people that followed this person's Pinterest account. And then online, I could go and look for those people. And through those people that followed this old Pinterest account, I found the person I was looking for. So it's always those pivot points, always that little bit of information that can all of a sudden it blew everything open for me. It was fantastic. So Spiderfoot is a fantastic tool. It brought up that old account, and I'll just show you a couple of screenshots that I took with it today. So as you know, I usually dox my old email address. So I plugged in my old email address that I used. It's a Gmail that I've used, since probably 2008, 2007. And so I have been everywhere with that email. And as you can see, it's found a lot of data elements. And I was actually quite surprised because it found some stuff that I had completely forgotten about that I even had. And it also shows, I'll just go back. So on the right-hand side, you can see the top data sources, which was social media, Gravatar, which is a website, Leak Lookup, which is another website, Email Rep website again, and User Supplied, which is just the email that I input to have a search for me across the interwebs. So here it's brought up all of the different places that I've signed up to, and my data has been in the data breach of these places. You can see MyFitnessPal, that's a big one. Zynga, which is a big one, which is like a gaming app thing, which obviously my son's probably put something on my phone, and that's how it's there. House.com, I'm really not sure what that is. Sounds familiar. It's probably old. Ledger.com, that was a big one. Unfortunately, my data was leaked there, so I get hit with cryptocurrency scams all the time. Adobe.com. So a heap of places where my information has been leaked. And if you are going that one step further to look at, to find these people and to find more information about them, you can go online and you can find these data leaks. You can find the hashes of my passwords and all my information. It might reveal a birth date or something like that. So you can take it that much further by looking for those data leaks as well, which in this instance, luckily, I didn't have to. It also found my old MySpace, the good old days of having coding music on and moving my friends around on my top friends list when they annoyed me. And I've got YouTube, so it's my YouTube, just my general YouTube, where I actually upload all of the stuff that I talk about on here too. Chess, I like playing chess online, so it's found my chess account, my Snapchat account. I don't know what Smule is. Some things are not correct. Hi, Chris. Good afternoon. At first, I thought you said Spiderfoot, so I've been looking that up. Yeah, it is Spiderfoot. So yeah, sometimes it does bring up things. There are repetitive things that I find that it brings up, like Smule or Parler, things that I've never signed up to that I don't know how, that they might be bots that have just created names under just randomly generated things that it pulls up data from that it's not going to help me. And it also can put the information into a beautiful little visualization for you. So I know a lot of companies get excited when they see these types of graphs. They think that you're really professional and that you're taking your job seriously and you're taking the time to do this, and Spiderfoot does it automatically for you. So you can see all of those data points just by me inputting my Gmail account. So there are two different types of Spiderfoot. So if you are a data collector, you can host your own version, which is the open source one, where there's a bit of data there, but you input your own data from your own data breaches. You use APIs to different data sources and things like that. So you can host that yourself. That's for like big companies, big institutions that buy data and have all of their stuff and they need it in their own system. And then there's Spiderfoot HX, which is what I use, which they pull data from a number of different places. And it's, as you saw, it can pull up a lot of stuff. So how much is it? That's the key to all of these things. So as I said, you do get 3 free scans a month when you sign up, or there is the freelancer, business, or enterprise. So freelancer is $79 a month. And when you do, if you are billed annually, you do get the 20% off. If you are that desktop investigator that needs to use this often, I think it's great pricing. If I really wanted to continuously use Spiderfoot, because it does automate some of the searches, it might save me a bit more time, then I will definitely look at buying it in the future. And it does pick up different information to Multi-Ego, which I've also spoken about on here before. Multi-Ego, it takes a bit more time to set up, get those things in, and it can be a little bit clunky at times. Whereas Spiderfoot, it's in your browser. You can do a terminal version, which, because it's all written in Python, but you don't have to do it that way. You can just go to their website and use it in the browser, which is just fantastic. And as you can see here again, just all of that information. I was just astounded by it. Found like an old blog that I had. Theme Forest is a WordPress add-on that you can get. It found that, and it found it within, probably a few minutes. So it's a fantastic place to go when you need that extra bit of information, when you need that pivot point, so you can blow the case wide open like I did this week, and it gets really exciting when that happens. And that's Spiderfoot.
Thank you very much, Casey Lee. You just got 2 extra likes during that presentation, so I'm not speaking to you anymore. I'm just going to speak to everybody else. Okay, that's great. Hang on, just got to do this. I first met Judith Kerrigan at the Kerrigan's Christmas party in Melbourne 21 years ago. Says a lot about a person who has 150 drunk licensed private investigators in their backyard at a party when they're 8 3/4 months pregnant and they're running and organising the whole show. So very organised person. If you're looking for work as a licensed private investigator, get in touch with Judith. She can handle the pressure and she'll get back to you and look after you. That's really important. I just can't get used to this Judith thing. Oh boy. Okay, so people, I promised to tell you all about some recent fraud outcomes in Queensland. Some of them will go back a year. It's a 3-minute presentation, so we'll just run through it. But within the presentation, and not necessarily related to everyone that comes up, there are 9 ways they discover fraud in workers' compensation that are real, right? This is not FBI, CIA irrelevant textbook stuff. This is downtown Adelaide, downtown Melbourne, downtown Ulladulla. This is how they do it. WorkSafe Queensland has a website where they have workers' compensation prosecution outcomes. And you can pop over to that website and you can go through recent prosecutions. So here's one from back in February that happened at Caboolture. someone was fined $4,000. They weren't truthful about their symptoms to their medical practitioners. So that's in Queensland, February 2022. Up in Cairns, a person had a conviction recorded, 12 months imprisonment that was suspended. They were charged with defrauding the insurer by failing to disclose their engagement in a calling while in receipt of compensation and making false or misleading statements about working status and sources of income. That's double speak for they had another job. In Brisbane in September 2021, in the Magistrates Court, someone received 14 months imprisonment. It was suspended. They were put on a 2-year bond, and the worker was charged with attempting to defraud the insurer by failing to disclose work they were undertaking to the insurer and to their medical practitioners during the course of their common law claim for damages. The worker was found guilty after the trial and was sentenced on that basis. Up in Mackay in September last year, a person had to pay back $14,172, 8 months in prison. Again, it was suspended, and they provided misleading information to either their doctors or their employers. The worker was charged with defrauding the insurer by exaggerating the extent of their symptoms and capacity to the insurer and medical practitioners. Geez, it's hard to make a dishonest living these days. In Brisbane in September, a conviction was accorded, 6 months imprisonment, wholly suspended. The worker was charged with defrauding the insurer by failing to disclose an engagement in a calling to the insurer and their medical practitioners. Double speak fee, had another job. Has to pay back $41,000. In Brisbane in August last year, someone was charged with 14 months imprisonment. They had ripped off work cover for $27,063. They repaid $10,000 of that the day before sentencing. Good move. The worker was charged for failing to notify the insurer of their engagement in a calling as a labourer, assistant, carpenter for providing false or misleading information in their working status to the insurer. The worker also attempted to defraud the insurer during the common law proceedings based on dishonest representations that they could not return to work as a labourer, assistant, carpenter. So the really big thing with that is if you can't work in one place, then you can't work in the other. So you can't have a double dip. That's just some recent cases from Queensland WorkSafe.
And we'll be back next week with some recent cases from CTP. It's similar, CTP insurance in a similar fashion. So that's something to look forward to next week. I had to leave that party early, Judith, because Russell Ames kept hogging the karaoke machine, and I can only stand so much country music before I go right off. So it wasn't my fault. It was Russell Ames being drunk and greedy. Not that I hold a grudge, Russell Ames, Victoria Work Cover Authority. Also this week, there was a couple of other jobs I didn't quite get to. BHP, looking for a head of investigations and response. And down in Tassie, Derwent Mercantile are looking for an inquiry agent. Derwent Mercantile, of course, they'll send you to the Australian Security Academy to study your qualification. They'll give you training in class as well. Derwent Mercantile sounds like it's up at New Norfolk, but no, it's down in Hobart, and they're a very well-established and big investigation agency down in Tasmania. What else have I got here in the news? Next week, we've got our AirLap Awards. This is what Casey gave away down in Melbourne, and everybody went and broke them straight away. Okay, so these are our AirLap Investigation Industry Awards with some Australian Security Academy Private Investigator coffee mugs strategically placed at the rear of them. Well done. Good merchandising, Casey. And this is what we've got so far. So last week I invited you to give some suggestions for our Excellence Awards, and people suggested professional development, the government investigation agency that might have done something correct, surveillance excellence, emerging investigation business. These are some of the awards we're going to discuss next week. I'd still like you, if you have someone that's been kind or good or helped you out in the industry and you think they're worthy of recognition, people, email me, PM me, join us, Casey and I, for the AirLab meeting, 1 o'clock next Friday, the 1st of July. I've got that right because we have Renee who makes sure I get dates right. Thank you, Renee. So next Friday, 1st of July, you'll get an invitation to the AirLab meeting, and we're looking for your input, see if someone's done something good. So if you think, oh, Casey does really good, I sent suggestions and we should give her an award, we'll give her a cheaper one. The more expensive one. So this is what the last ones looked like. They cost a fortune, and then they all broke in the mail, or the people broke them that day after they got them when they got drunk and celebrated it. So that's what's happening next week. Don't forget our meeting. It's the industry association that's for you, the private investigator. We have people that have been investigators for 40 years in that association. So it's not just a beginner industry association. Just because it's free, it's no less an association than anywhere else. And I tell you what, that's our 10th one when we have that next week. That's 10 more meetings than I've been to for other associations this year. I've watched a few presentations, but I haven't had any real meetings. We will have CPD points next week in relation to what we're talking about. So we will be discussing these awards. No, that's SpyCurious. These awards. I'm old. So we will be discussing these awards, plus consulting with the Office of Fair Trading in relation to consulting with us about the surveillance and the marital and relationship surveillance. Now, I've given you an example today of Australia's world's worst surveillance. Okay, so that's really important. So I'm standing up for surveillance operatives who don't do marital and relationship surveillance and what they have to do in relation to what the OFT wants, because surveillance operatives adhere in the real world of workers' compensation, CTP liability and corporate surveillance to client service level agreements. They adhere to vulnerable client requirements, and they all have training in that. In Victoria, for example, they all have training in basically people who might be suicidal and in relation to suicide assist. So they have that already. Those things are in place. Adding another layer or another outrageous expense just because some people do marital and relationship surveillance is very hard. And I hear people saying to me on the internet and see what they say, and they say, oh, yeah, but one lady a week's killed and all that sort of thing. Yeah, I understand that, or I'd love to be able to stop that, but adding an extra pile on top of surveillance investigators that are not involved in marital and relationship surveillance will not solve that. So that's what we're looking at. We're not trying to make it worse. We're trying to make an understanding of what they actually do in that world. Just to make sure I've covered everything. Have we covered everything, Casey, that we promised?
Yep. I don't know a single, even just individual operator that would undertake a coercive surveillance job. Like, I'm sure that there are people out there, but I don't know any. And I know a lot of investigators.
Yeah, well, you do. And you get to know a lot of investigators. And it comes down to people having the right risk management in place. Yeah. And we have a prolific commenter on this program. He has all the risk management in place for that sort of thing. And I really respect his work. He's been around and he would see through that kind of stuff straight away. It's asking the right questions. Why do you want to do this? You know, it's like when you're asked to locate someone. I just want to see my kids. Haven't seen them for 5 years. Look, I've worked as a TAFE teacher over 35 years. And I've had 4 students whose identities were changed by the police and their children's identities were changed to get away from abusive relationships where the husband's had a nasty hit on the head at work or wherever and's gone mad and he just wants to kill his family. That's as a TAFE investigator. So
we've always taught licensed private investigators, ask the right questions and don't go locating people and giving that to people. They may have alternative aspirations with the information. And we're given examples in this program of celebrities in the United States that have been murdered through the use of private investigators locating them. The video you watched about work cover fraud came about because this week, only today, it was reported in the Brisbane Times that a man, excuse me, has been charged for fraud that wasn't on that list. He was off on workers' compensation, and he earned thousands from Uber, Woolworths and Big W in 19 months. So he was working at all those places at some time, or a combination of any one of them at any time, over and above what he was getting from his weekly benefits for injured and not being able to work. So that's the whole deal, is if you're injured in one place and can't work, you cannot go and work somewhere else. This is my pick for our private investigator meme of the week. I thought this was absolutely fantastic. So it's basically supposed to be a lawyer watching a surveillance video, and that lawyer who represents the person in the video is acting like they can't tell who it is. The number one thing with surveillance is, in any investigation, not just surveillance, is identity. And here is a very clever pictorial about someone trying to save their sorry client's backside by pretending they can't actually see who it is. And if you've been in court, I've seen lawyers do this just before they make me set up my camera, put in the card or put in the tape, put it on the tripod, turn it on. They do everything they possibly can. And that pictorial meme, that sums it up. That's Mike Evans's meme of the week. Casey will have one for next week, of course. Won't you, Casey?
Meme queen.
Yeah. We're about investigations in this program, people. When you get an investigation, we expect you to be in there like swimwear, confidently approach it and look for the way in, not the way out. If there's something you enjoyed in this video or you want to sue me, you can watch the replay tomorrow, Saturday, on our YouTube channel, where it will be replayed. That's the YouTube channel that this week hit 150,000 views. Now, 4 years ago, we discovered that people were watching that YouTube channel. We didn't even know. And we had 30,000 views. That was 4 years ago. Since then, 700 people a week have been going to this YouTube channel for information about private investigations, corporate investigations, and government investigations. So that is unreal. It is a resource where you can find out information. Now, here's an example of that. This week, a licensed New South Wales and Victorian investigator based in Victoria was in court being cross-examined. This happened on Wednesday. The magistrate asked the sworn-in and under-oath investigator what the act was that affected optical surveillance in New South Wales. Now, it's some time since he did his course. And he's a very highly experienced investigator. And he said, I don't know, Your Honour, I can't remember. She said, well, if we have a recess, can you find out? And he said, yes, I can. So she called a recess for 10 minutes. He rang me and asked me what it was. Now, I'm based in Queensland. Why should I know what the New South Wales Act is? Well, I should, because I teach it, right? Yeah. But I've got no warning whatsoever. So I go on this YouTube channel and I look at Pat Flynn's presentation on recording conversations, which took me 25 seconds to find, because in that presentation he includes optical surveillance apart from audio recordings. And Pat told me from a recording done 3 years ago what the legislation was and also what the important case law was. So I rang back the investigator within 4 minutes and I said, this is what the legislation is. And he had his notebook with him and he wrote it down. And this is what the relevant case law is. And this was a big corporate surveillance, big company, self-insurer, really big company. They were standing next to him listening to this, right?
And then the court rang him and said, come on, you've got to come back in now, while he's talking to me. And I don't know the outcome, but he was covered by what he'd done. He didn't trespass. He didn't do anything illegal. I clarified all that with him in our conversation and told him what the act was and told him what the case law was. So people, 150,000 people have found all that free information here relevant. And if you want to watch anything, you missed what Spiderfoot is, or you came in late and missed one of my really funny jokes, go there tomorrow morning and it'll be there. Yes, they're really funny, aren't they, Casey? All those jobs are on our Australian Private Investigator, Corporate and Government Investigator jobs page. You can see them. We update that every week. We don't put every job there, but basically that's where they are. You have to ask to join, and I will join you. If you're not selling cryptocurrency, I'll let you in. And if you need to contact me for any reason whatsoever, that is my contact number. I spend all day on the phone. Leave a message and I'll get back to you. I'm Mike Evans, and that was Casey Pine, and that was episode 153 of SpyCurious. We'll be back next week with 154. We'll look forward to seeing you then, and we'll go out in our usual way.
작전 종료. 전원 복귀할 것.
That's our mission complete for this week. From Mike Evans and Casey Pine. We'll see you next secret week. Don't do an undercover blunder, people. Ask me for that article. I will send it to you unedited, and you'll see what the newspapers said at the time. See you next week. Thanks, Casey. Bye.
Bye.